Man, what a pleasure to be back here again. It's unbelievable that I get the opportunity to come and speak with so many friends and fellow warriors in the fight for freedom. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. Because in reality, there's very little that we can do in Washington, D.C. to change the course that our nation has been on. There's very little that we can do. Because what we face in this nation is not a political crisis, it's a cultural crisis. Some of you may have been here last year. I spoke over at the Bible Museum about some incidents that my family and I had been through. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was at congressional baseball practice when the Capitol Police came and awarded medals of merit to me and several of my colleagues for our actions on a baseball field a little over 2 years ago. When a man crazed by politics, thank you, a man who was crazed by politics walked on the field with the intention of killing Republicans. Why? Because we were going to repeal Obamacare. The media hasn't presented that in their reporting. Shortly after that, my wife and I were driving back to Washington, D.C. when somebody driving 110 miles an hour ran in the back of our car on the interstate, sent it sideways, and went flipping down the interstate. 2 weeks after that, we were driving, as we were recovering from that accident, we were driving back home. My wife heard something hit the back of the car. Of course, I'm one of these guys that if she hears something in the middle of the night, it's the wind. It's always the wind, right? I don't care if it sounds like somebody banging on the front door. It's the wind. As long as I don't have to get out of bed, it's the wind. I said it was just a rock. She said, rocks don't hit the back of the car. When we stopped, we found an AR round embedded in the back of the car. The FBI ruled that it was an assassination attempt. Bad things happen in threes, right? A few weeks after that, we were on a train of other fellow Republicans going to a convention when a garbage truck pulled in front of the train and partially derailed it. You know, I wonder, God, why are you putting me through this? Each one of these are life-changing events. These are incidents that most people would never, ever go through. Obviously, I saw the hand of providence on our lives. But what is the purpose? And once it dawned on me, there is nothing me as a politician could do to change the outcome of any one of those. When I was pinned down on the ground trying to save the life of one of my fellow colleagues who was bleeding to death in front of me on the baseball field, never once did I think, wait till I get back to the Capitol, I'm going to pass a bill. You know why? He was already violating dozens of federal and state laws. There's not a single law in the world I could have passed that would have stopped that act of evil. We're laying on the side of the interstate after being pulled out of our car, waiting on an ambulance. I never thought, boy, you wait till I pass a bill, because speeding, distracted driving is already against the law. There's nothing I could do to change it. It's already against the law to shoot at people on the highway. And it's also against the law to drive around those barricades at railroad tracks. There's only one thing that could change the acts of evil that we experience, and that's to change the hearts and the minds of those who are perpetuating those, and that's only Jesus. My job as a politician is to protect the rights of conscience, the rights of worship, the freedoms that we have in this nation so that we can change the hearts and minds of those people. Look, the battle that we're facing for freedom, and we have always faced for freedom, is on four battlefronts. It's spiritual, cultural, political, and sometimes physical. If we do the first three, we don't have to do the fourth, the physical battle. But a lot of times, we as conservatives, we as Christians, we as believers, we get those inverted. And we look to Washington, D.C. to fix the problems that we face, when actually what we face is more fixable by those of us in the community. I hate politics. As Virginia said, I've been involved in it for a long time, ran for the state house in 2004, and people ask, why did you get involved if you hate politics? I said, well, first of all, there's a reason I hate politics. The word poly is many, and ticks are blood-sucking parasites. But my dad told me something when I was young. He said, son, if there's something in life you don't like, you got two choices. You can do something to change the situation or accept the status quo and go on with your life, but complaining never accomplishes anything. We're not accepting the status quo. Folks, we are winning. We are winning. When this businessman out of New York who had zero chance of winning the presidency said, look, once I become president, you're going to get tired of winning, that was a warning. And people are asking me all the time, how can you say we're winning when what is going on in Washington, D.C.? And I'll tell you this, it's quite simple. I was one of those that was honored to be part of the official delegation that traveled to France for the commemoration of D-Day, the 75th anniversary. So my dad was one of those that was there. And so it was quite an honor to be there. And I remembered as I was sitting there, my dad told me something a long time ago. He said, son, one of the ways that you can tell that you're winning is how intense the battle is when you're fighting. Because the enemy doesn't fight back until you start taking their ground. Next week, we're going to celebrate, as John Adams said, the greatest epic in American history. And that was us declaring our independence from England. And in closing, I just want to share with you something that he wrote to Abigail. He said, I'm apt to believe that this day will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival, and it ought to be commemorated as the Day of Deliverance. He goes on to say that it ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other from this time forward, which we do. But I left a little something out in there. You see, he said it ought to be commemorated as the Day of Deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to Almighty God. Because he understood one thing: freedom isn't free, and it's going to take a lot of struggle. In fact, he addressed that in his second paragraph. He said, you will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet, through all the gloom, I can see rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in that day's transaction. What he said is, I know it's going to be tough. And we're going to face tremendous battles and tremendous fights, just like those brave patriots did on the shores of Normandy. But what makes the difference is, do you look at the circumstances that surround you? Are you focused upon the fighting, or are you keeping your eye upon your cause, which is freedom? We have to keep our eye upon the cause, because that is the ravishing rays of light and glory that our founders talked about. I want you to think about that, and also think about what you've seen here. The number of cabinet secretaries that have been here to speak to us. I mean, Elaine Chao just did a tremendous job. Betsy DeVos. I mean, how many cabinet secretaries would come to a conservative, faith-based organization to talk about the future of America and the things that we're doing? It's because we are winning. I'm excited about where we are right now. It is a fight. It's a struggle back home, but we can win this if we keep our eyes upon our cause and understand God's providence didn't end in 1776 or in 1941 or in 1944. It's still here today. We can win. We will win. And you know what? I'm not tired of winning yet. God bless you. God bless America.